Just before 11 p.m., a white sedan tears down a rural Florida road. Minutes later, a neighbor finds 16-year-old Layla Silvernail near a dumpster, still breathing. By the end of the search, investigators would find Michael Hodo Jr. and Camille Quarles too, and the break would come from the youngest person in the car. Marion County sits in central Florida, a mix of horse farms, small towns, and long rural roads outside the city of Ocklawaha. The Ocklawaha and Silver Springs area where this case unfolds is quiet, the kind of place where a gunshot at night gets noticed by name. Layla Silvernail was 16 years old. Those who knew her would later describe a girl who was, in her grandmother's words, deeply loved, the kind of loss that a family says never stops hurting. On March 30th, 2023, Layla was driving her own white sedan when the night took a turn no one could undo. Michael Hodo Jr. was 17. Camille Quarles was 16. Investigators would later say all three teenagers were riding in Layla's car together that night of their own free will. What none of them could have known was who else was already in that car. According to investigators, the night began hours earlier. Around 6:30 p.m., an arranged meeting over Snapchat brought together several teenagers in front of a residence in Marion County, reportedly to buy a firearm. What was supposed to be a simple exchange turned into a robbery. A witness later told police he got into Layla's white sedan to complete the exchange. Inside, he said, were two people he did not know. According to the affidavit, one struck him with a gun barrel and demanded the money back. Investigators later identified them as the 12-year-old and 17-year-old suspects. Around 7:10 p.m., neighbors in the area reported hearing a single gunshot. They described seeing a white sedan leaving at high speed. At this point, investigators believe all 6 teenagers, the 3 who would become victims and the 3 who would become suspects, were still together in that car. Court documents describe the hours after the robbery as chaotic. The group allegedly drove to a known drug house, then spent time committing burglaries and what investigators called car hopping, breaking into unlocked vehicles. Somewhere in those hours, according to prosecutors, the mood inside that car turned. Just before 11 p.m., a Silver Springs resident was told by a neighbor that a girl had been dropped near his dumpster. Moments earlier, he had heard 4 or 5 loud pops. When he went to check, he found Layla Silvernail bleeding from a gunshot wound to the head, but still breathing. Marion County Sheriff's Office deputies responded to the area of Forest Lakes Park on SE 183rd Avenue Road shortly after 10:50 p.m. They found Layla Silvernail unconscious near the dumpster. Paramedics rushed her to a hospital in Ocklawaha. She would later die from her injuries. At the hospital, doctors worked to save Layla. She had been shot in the head. Despite everything medical staff could do, she succumbed to her injuries. What had started as a single 911 call about one girl near a dumpster was about to become something much larger. Here is what investigators say happened in order. Around 6:30 p.m., a robbery during a gun deal. Around 7:10 p.m., a single gunshot and a speeding sedan. By 10:50 p.m., Layla Silvernail is found near a dumpster. She would not be the only one investigators were searching for. As Marion County deputies processed the scene where Layla was found, they realized something troubling. She had not been alone in that car. A search began for the others who had been with her. By the next morning, that search had an answer no one wanted. At approximately 7:55 a.m. on March 31, 2023, the morning after Layla was found, a 17-year-old boy was located dead nearby. He was identified as Michael Hodo Jr. What had begun as one girl found near a dumpster was now a second life lost in the same night. In less than 12 hours, Marion County had gone from one 911 call to 2 confirmed deaths. Investigators still did not have the full picture. A third teenager from that car, Camille Quarles, was still missing. For 2 more days, investigators searched for Camille Quarles. 16 detectives Andrew Canterbury and Ryan Stith led the case, working alongside the Florida Department of Law Enforcement and the U.S. Marshals Service. Then, on April 1, 2023, the search led them to water. On April 1, 2023, Camille Quarles was found deceased in the trunk of a vehicle that had been driven into a body of water. The car belonged to no one connected to Camille's family. It had been used, investigators say, to dispose of what the suspects hoped no one would find. Layla Silvernail, 16, Michael Hodo Jr., 17, Camille Quarles, 16. In under 3 days, all three were gone. Sheriff Billy Woods would later say he was shocked by the young ages involved, of the victims, and of who investigators believed had done this. With 3 victims confirmed, detectives shifted focus entirely. They pulled phone records, Snapchat messages, and photos from the victims' devices, including images of weapons and ammunition. Piece by piece, a picture began to form of exactly who had been in that car. At a press conference, Sheriff Billy Woods told reporters his office had been shocked and saddened by the violence. Not only are the victims juveniles, he said, but the murderers are juveniles as well. The investigation was about to close in on 3 names. Sheriff Woods later said the suspects left behind a trail of evidence. Phones, messages, and witness statements all pointed in the same direction, toward 3 teenagers who had been in Layla's car that night and who investigators believed had turned on the very people they'd spent the evening with. On April 7, 2023, Sheriff Woods announced 2 arrests. Robert Robinson, 17, and Christopher Atkins, 12, were taken into custody and charged with first-degree murder. A third suspect, 16-year-old Tage Bruton, remained at large, considered armed and dangerous. Robert Landrew Robinson was 17 years old at the time of the murders. He was arrested first alongside the youngest suspect. Investigators say his statements to police would become central to reconstructing exactly what happened inside that car. Christopher Atkins was 12 years old. He was arrested at his home after deputies obtained a search warrant. Sheriff Woods would later say his department was, in his words, shocked and saddened by the young ages of everyone involved, the victims, and the accused. 12 years old. It is a number that stopped even veteran investigators, and it was about to become one of the most difficult interrogations of the entire case. Because Christopher Atkins was only 12, Florida law required a parent or guardian be present during questioning. His mother sat beside him in the interrogation room. What followed, according to people close to the case, was a lengthy and difficult breakdown before he began to speak. According to the arrest affidavit, Atkins eventually told detectives he shot one of the female victims. He said the older suspect had told him to do it, or, he claimed, his own family would be harmed. He also told police he did not initially believe she had died. Robert Robinson told detectives something similar, that he feared for his own life that night. If I did not do what Tage wanted me to do, he later told investigators, I would have died that night with them. It was the first time the name of the third suspect surfaced clearly in the case. Tage Bruton, 16, already known to authorities, already, according to the sheriff, in custody once before for an unrelated incident at school. Now the most wanted name in Central Florida. At the press conference, Sheriff Woods offered a blunt explanation for what happened. Basically, in simple terms, there is no honor among thieves, he said. And at some point, these 3 individuals turned on our 3 victims and murdered them. Later, when asked directly why this happened, an investigator with the Marion County Sheriff's Office gave a simple answer in court. It was about wanting a firearm that Michael Hodo had, 3 lives over a gun that one of the victims was carrying. With 2 suspects in custody, the search for 16-year-old Tage Bruton intensified. The U.S. Marshals Service joined the Marion County Sheriff's Office. He was considered armed and dangerous, and investigators believed he had fled the area entirely. As news spread through Marion County, the community reacted with disbelief. 3 teenagers dead. 3 teenagers accused. GoFundMe pages for funeral costs appeared for Layla, for Camille, for Michael, families now facing funerals no one had prepared for. Days into the manhunt, a tip led investigators 30 miles west, to Lake County, Florida. The U.S. Marshals Service, working with the Lake County Sheriff's Office, moved in on a location where Bruton was believed to be hiding. On April 8, 2023, the U.S. Marshals Service captured Tage Bruton in Groveland, Florida. He faced additional charges, carjacking with a firearm, aggravated assault, and grand theft on top of what was coming. All 3 suspects were now in custody. All three suspects were now behind bars, held without bond at the Marion County Jail. But the legal question that would define the next 2 years of this case had only just begun. Would they be tried as juveniles or as adults? Walter Forgy, Marion County's chief assistant state attorney, told reporters his office was in constant communication with the sheriff and planned to aggressively pursue the prosecution of all defendants responsible for these heinous crimes. 3 defendants, all charged as adults: Robert Robinson, 17 at the time; Taj Bruton, 16 at the time; Christopher Atkins, 12 at the time, the youngest person charged with first-degree murder in the case's history in this jurisdiction. In May of 2023, the case went before a Marion County grand jury. Detectives presented weeks of evidence: phone records, witness statements, the affidavits, the recovered vehicle. The jury's decision would formally determine the charges each defendant would face. The grand jury indicted Robert Robinson and Taj Bruton on 3 counts of first-degree murder each, 1 for every victim. Christopher Atkins was indicted on 1 count, tied specifically to the death of Camille Quarles. All 3 also faced armed robbery and evidence tampering charges. All 3 defendants were ordered held without bond at the Marion County Jail. What had started as a single 911 call about a girl near a dumpster was now a fully charged triple homicide case, and it would take 2 more years to reach its conclusion. For 2 years, the case moved slowly through the Florida court system. Christopher Atkins grew from 12 to 14. The legal fight over whether the case would go to trial or end in pleas continued quietly behind courthouse doors. On April 29, 2025, Christopher Atkins, now 14, entered a guilty plea to all charges. The hearing lasted less than an hour. As part of his plea, he agreed to testify against his 2 co-defendants, Robert Robinson and Taj Bruton, if the case went to trial. In June of 2025, Taj Bruton, now 18, also pleaded guilty. Like Atkins, his plea was an open plea, meaning no agreement had been reached in advance about what his final sentence would be. That decision would be left entirely to the judge. That same month, Robert Robinson, now 19, entered a plea of no contest, avoiding a trial entirely. Like the others, his plea was open. The state attorney's office confirmed all 3 cases would now move directly to sentencing. 3 guilty pleas, no trial. After 2 years, the legal question was settled. All that remained was for a judge to decide exactly what each of these 3 young men would face for the rest of their lives. On July 22, 2025, the sentencing hearings began. Judge Robert Hodges presided. Prosecutors, family members, and character witnesses were all given the chance to speak. So was Christopher Atkins himself, now 15 years old. Layla Silvernail's grandmother addressed the court. "I'm just broken," she said. "Here, Papa and I were already not in good health, and now this heartbreak feels like it's slowly killing us from the inside out." She said she hoped the defendants would see Layla's face every night when they closed their eyes. Michael Hodo's father, in a statement read by a victim's advocate, described the impossible finality of losing his son. No more conversations, no more hugs, no chance to see the man Michael was becoming. Robert Robinson's mother, Erica Trowell, was also present. She asked the judge to consider a sentence that would allow her son the chance to grow, get help, and one day re-enter society as a changed man. The judge listened to every voice before deciding. Judge Hodges explained he could only consider the robbery and cover-up in Atkins's sentencing, since his first-degree murder charge applied specifically to Camille Quarles, not the other 2 victims. He sentenced Christopher Atkins to 40 years in prison, with credit for time already served. Judge Hodges addressed the courtroom directly. "The one thing that none of us can do is undo what was done," he said. "I can't restore anyone to where they were before any of this happened. Atkins would be eligible to have his sentence reviewed in 25 years. The next day, July 23, 2025, Taj Bruton and Robert Robinson stood before the same judge. Because they had each been charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, 1 for every victim, the stakes for their sentencing were the highest in the case. Judge Hodges sentenced Taj Bruton and Robert Robinson to life in prison for the murders of Layla Silvernail, Camille Quarles and Michael Hodo Jr., because both were minors at the time of the killings. Florida law entitles them to a parole eligibility review after 25 years. In his own statement, Michael Hodo's father told the court the defendants deserved the death penalty, a sentence that was legally unavailable because of their ages at the time of the crimes. It was a moment that captured the full weight of what this case had cost. With Bruton and Robinson sentenced to life and Atkins sentenced to 40 years, the Ocklawaha triple homicide case was formally closed, more than 2 years after that first 911 call about a girl near a dumpster. State Attorney Bill Gladson released a statement following the sentencing. "Justice demanded nothing less than full accountability," he said. "These convictions honor the stolen lives of Layla, Michael, and Camille while affirming that no one, regardless of age, may brutally take the life of another without facing the gravest consequences." Michael Hodo Jr. was 17, a young man whose father says he'll never get the chance to see the man he was becoming. His memory is now kept, his father said, in a jar on the family's mantel, a small, permanent presence in an otherwise empty room. Camille Quarles was 16. Her first-degree murder charge belonged specifically to Atkins's case, but her life, like Layla's and Michael's, was never just a charge number. She was somebody's daughter, somebody's friend, gone in a single night that none of them saw coming. And Layla Silvernail, 16, the first name in this case, the girl found near a dumpster on a rural road. Her grandmother's words to the court were simple and devastating. "This is a heartbreak that doesn't heal. It just becomes something a family learns to carry." The Marion County Sheriff's Office credited detectives Andrew Canterbury and Ryan Stith for leading the 2-year investigation, alongside the Florida Department of Law Enforcement and the U.S. Marshals Service, the partnership that ultimately built the case that closed in July of 2025. Here is how the case closed. Robert Robinson, life in prison, review eligibility after 25 years. Taj Bruton, life in prison, review eligibility after 25 years. Christopher Atkins, 40 years, sentence review after 25 years, 3 teenagers gone, 3 sentences handed down. Christopher Atkins remains, by public record, one of the youngest people in Florida to be charged, convicted, and sentenced as an adult for first-degree murder. His case reopened a national conversation about how the justice system should handle children who commit adult crimes. In the end, investigators say this entire case traced back to a robbery over a single firearm, a decision made in a matter of seconds that cost 3 teenagers their lives and effectively ended the futures of 3 others. 6 teenagers got in a car together on March 30th, 2023. 3 did not survive the night. 3 were sentenced 2 years later. There is no version of this story where everyone walks away. Today, the case files sit closed in the 5th Judicial Circuit of Florida. Robert Robinson and Taj Bruton serve life sentences. Christopher Atkins serves 40 years. The state attorney's office says its work in this case is done, but the family's work of grieving never fully ends. Sheriff Billy Wood's words from that first press conference in April 2023 still echo through the case file. "They took a life. Are y'all comprehending that? They took a life without thought. They deserve the full extent of the law. We need to hold them accountable and then hope that we can change them." This case raised a question Marion County had never had to answer at this scale before. What happens when the line between victim and perpetrator runs through the same age group, the same neighborhoods, sometimes the same friend groups? Reading back through the arrest affidavits, one detail stands out. This wasn't a single impulsive act. It was hours of escalating decisions, a robbery, a gunshot, a group that kept driving together even after someone had already been shot. In 25 years, review eligibility will open for all 3 men. Christopher Atkins will be nearing 40. Taj Bruton and Robert Robinson will be in their mid-40s. Layla, Michael, and Camille will remain, as they are today, 16 and 17 forever. For the families of Layla, Michael, and Camille, the sentencing hearings closed a legal chapter but not an emotional one. Grandmothers, fathers, and friends left the courthouse in July 2025 with a verdict, but not with the people they lost. In the years since, Marion County officials have pointed to this case in conversations about juvenile access to firearms, gang-adjacent recruitment of younger teenagers, and how quickly a single bad decision among friends can spiral into something none of them can undo. Layla Silvernail, Michael Hodo Jr., Camille Quarles. Say their names, because a case file will always remember the defendants by number and by sentence. It's on the rest of us to remember these three by name. Layla Silvernail, 16, found March 30th, 2023. Michael Hodo Jr., 17, found March 31st, 2023. Camille Quarles, 16, found April 1st, 2023. 3 teenagers, 3 days, 1 night that none of them chose. This case leaves behind a rural stretch of road, a pond that will never look ordinary again to the people who live nearby, and 3 prison sentences that will not bring anyone back. It leaves behind the question of what could have stopped that night before it started. The pond where Camille Quarles was found has since become, for her family, a place they avoid driving past. For investigators, it remains a reminder of how far 3 teenagers went to make sure no one would find what they'd done. State Attorney Bill Gladson called it full accountability. For 3 families, it was a life sentence and 40 years. Numbers that will never equal what was taken, but numbers that, per the court record, are meant to represent the gravest consequences the law allows. Whatever the courts decided, whatever the sentences ultimately mean, Layla, Michael, and Camille were real people. Teenagers with mornings, with friends, with plans for days that were never supposed to look like March 30th, 2023. Sources are in the description: CNN, Fox 35 Orlando, ABC 7 Hour, ABC 13, NBC 6 South Florida, WTSP, First Coast News, OcklawahaNews.com, WCJB, Click Orlando, and the Office of the State Attorney, 5th Judicial Circuit of Florida. Final sentencing occurred July 22nd and 23rd, 2025. If this case stayed with you, hit the like button, subscribe, and tap the bell. We cover real cases, real families, real systems. Layla, Michael, and Camille deserve to be remembered as people, not just as a case. We'll see you in the next one.